For the fans, I thought the best thing that we could do as a company was bring MJF back.
He wants me to work with pricks constantly. That's what it is.
Today I had to make one of the toughest decisions of my professional career. Today I terminated Phil Brooks, CM Punk, for cause.
And then I quit. I turned to Tony and I said, this place is a fucking joke, man. You're a clown. I quit.
Hate as much as you want, AEW represented a gigantic milestone in the history of pro wrestling. In 2018, WWE's product was complete shit, and a lot of that was due to the lack of competition, which never forced them to improve their product, since no other company threatens their audience. AEW, for the first time since WCW, brought real competition to the monopoly that belonged to the McMahon family at that time. AEW shows were exciting, violent, with engaging stories that featured recognizable names. But after a few years, many mistakes were made, and many of them in the hands of an inexperienced promoter who wanted the world, but now apparently will have to get by with much less. In today's video, you will watch how Tony Khan is destroying AEW. But first, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the amazing videos we'll be releasing. With a vision to create something innovative, Tony Khan and his team promised a promotion focused on compelling storytelling, high-level matches, and a diverse roster. The first major event, Double or Nothing, signaled this new era with a series of intense 5-star worthy matches. From there, AEW established itself with its weekly show, Dynamite, consistently delivering thrilling matches and characters that quickly captivated the audience. Unlike WWE, AEW emphasized creative freedom for its wrestlers, allowing them to shape their characters more organically. But that's not why we're here, but rather to list the problems experienced by the company, which we will mention in topics. Underutilized characters. AEW's women's division, for example, did not develop as expected, and inconsistencies in storylines hindered some important rivalries. The lack of a structured creative team and the excessive freedom given to the wrestlers sometimes resulted in disorganized shows, with characters who had the potential to shine fading into the background. Keith Lee, for instance, arrived in AEW with great expectations, coming off a clean victory over Randy Orton in WWE. Initially, he was prominently featured, even winning the tag team titles with Swerve Strickland, but after losing the belts, it seemed Tony Khan shifted his focus to other characters. While Swerve continued to rise, even defeating Hangman Page, Keith Lee got lost in the shuffle. Keith Lee's case wasn't unique. Miro, a talent with superstar potential, disappeared for long periods, leaving fans wondering if there was a clear plan for him. This inconsistency with certain wrestlers highlighted one of AEW's biggest challenges: too much talent, but not enough time to effectively develop their stories. The lack of specialized writers and more careful coordination of segments hurt the growth of characters who, with stronger narratives, could have become major stars. Ring of Honor. This idea seems like shit from the beginning. AEW can barely divide the screen time of its original roster. Well, now bringing a whole new wave of athletes to the roster seems like a wonderful idea, right? So, ROH often seemed relegated to the background, as if it were a lesser priority amidst AEW's growth. With Tony Khan shouldering so many responsibilities, the strain of managing multiple brands became apparent. The introduction of a creative team focused on long-term storytelling could provide AEW with more structure and prevent important talents and brands from being overshadowed. Ranking system. Ranking systems are confusing even for real sports. Take the UFC, for example. Basically, every time we see the 6th, 7th in the ranking competing for titles due to a series of factors. And this is not the fault of the sport itself, but rather of the ranking system. So tell me, what is the need to bring an essentially confusing system to a scripted program that never used it or needed its existence? The result ended up being a mess, with people below the ranking competing for the belt on multiple occasions and completely taking away its meaning. In a 2022 interview, Tony Khan admitted that the ranking system had flaws, a lesson in the difficulty of balancing a sports-based approach with the entertainment of wrestling. Interim champion. AEW innovated with several strategies in the world of wrestling, but some of them raised questions among fans. One such concept was the introduction of interim champions, a common practice in sports like MMA, but one that received mixed reactions in professional wrestling. The idea was simple. When the reigning champion was injured or unable to defend the title, an interim champion would take their place until a unification match could be held. The issue is that, In wrestling, where storylines need to be clear and coherent, this didn't always work so well. The first instance of this in AEW occurred with the TNT Championship. Cody Rhodes, the then champion, was unable to compete, and the title was put up for grabs between Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes. Later, the concept was used for the AEW World Championship when CM Punk, after winning the title, had to take time off due to injury. Jon Moxley stepped in as the interim champion, but the idea of being a secondary champion created an odd feeling. Moxley fought as and defended his title, but he was always labeled as the interim champion, as if he was merely holding the throne until Punk returned. When Punk came back, Moxley had to unify the titles by defeating him, which actually complicated something that could have been resolved more directly by temporarily stripping Punk of the belt. Another example of how this idea brought more confusion than prestige was the case of Toni Storm. She won the women's title while the then champion Thunder Rosa was injured, but again, she carried the label of interim champion. After losing the title to Jamie Hayter, it was only after this defeat that the interim title was removed from her history, leaving fans with the feeling that the real title was never truly in Storm's possession. These problems didn't stop there. While Moxley, Toni Storm, and other wrestlers dealt with the complications of their interim titles, AEW was also being impacted by backstage tensions. The most notorious case involves CM Punk, who after the All Out pay-per-view got into a real fight with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, the company's executive vice presidents. The chaos began after Punk publicly criticized the AEW executives, including Omega and the Bucks, during a press conference alongside Tony Khan, the company's president. Punk threw harsh barbs, creating a storm of drama that shook the company. Not even Khan's attempts to divert attention by attacking WWE during the conference could contain the disaster that unfolded. Backstage problems. These backstage tensions are not exclusive to AEW. WWE and WCW faced similar dilemmas in the past, but in AEW's case, the situation was intensified due to Omega and the Bucks' dual roles as both top-tier wrestlers and key decision makers. This created an extra layer of complexity, especially when personal and professional interests collided. A prime example of how this blend of power and rivalry can affect the company is Cody Rhodes' departure. As one of the founders of AEW and an executive vice president, Cody was a cornerstone of the promotion. However, he left the company in 2022 to return to WWE, which many considered a major loss for AEW. The promotion failed to capitalize on Cody's full potential, confining him to mid-level feuds instead of positioning him in the world title picture. This was partly due to a decision made at Full Gear in 2019, when Cody declared that after losing to Chris Jericho, he could never again challenge for the AEW World Championship. Over time, Cody Rhodes has proven that his decision to return to WWE was more than the right choice. His promos began to resonate deeply with the audience, making him one of the company's most prominent figures. Many see him as the potential hero destined to dethrone Roman Reigns and end his historic reign as champion. This was an opportunity AEW could have capitalized on, turning Cody into a megastar on their own turf. However, for reasons that remain unclear, they let him go, paving the way for him to shine in WWE. It's a clear sign that if you want to compete at the same level as WWE, you need to fight for top-tier talent and keep him on your roster. Now, returning to CM Punk's situation, the controversies surrounding All Out, the backstage brawl, and the fallout from that event had deep impacts on AEW. Punk, who initially seemed to be in an uncertain position with the company after the scandal, returned almost a year later in June 2023 with a prominent role on AEW's new show, Collision. It was a logical decision. Punk was still one of the biggest names in wrestling, and his presence drew more fans and sold tickets. However, the internal conflict between Team Punk and Team Young Bucks only intensified. This conflict reached its peak at the biggest event in AEW's history, All In, held at the iconic Wembley Stadium. During the event, Punk made a provocative comment about Jack Perry, referencing the song Cry Me a River, which led to yet another backstage altercation. The result? CM Punk was fired from the company shortly after the historic event, a decision that split opinions both within and outside AEW. Many believed that firing Punk was a huge mistake, as he was one of the company's biggest draws. Others, however, argued that the decision was right, given the difficulty in managing Punk's unpredictable behavior. Regardless of which side you take, the fact remains that AEW will have to deal with the consequence of this decision moving forward. Tony Khan undoubtedly faced a dilemma in handling the situation. Keeping Punk might have been more beneficial for business, but the growing backstage tension made coexistence unsustainable. The announcement of his dismissal was made publicly, right in Punk's hometown, a day before a major pay-per-view, adding even more drama to the situation. A week after the chaos, Punk made cryptic statements on social media, subtly expressing his frustration. But what shocked the wrestling world was his triumphant return to WWE after nearly a decade away. His comeback created an immense buzz, boosted ratings for Monday Night Raw, and led fans to speculate about Punk's future in WWE. Now the wrestling world eagerly awaits the next steps of the best in the world, but everyone knows that whatever happens, it will be in WWE and no longer in AEW. As one said, this is the truth. Looking at AEW's missteps, it's clear that Tony Khan and his team, despite elevating the company to extraordinary heights, faced obstacles and challenges that come with the territory of international wrestling. Recognizing mistakes is essential to moving forward and ensuring the promotion's progress. Between creative decisions, lost talents, and internal tensions, the future of the company depends on how well it learns from its mistakes. And what do you think? Will AEW bounce back and fix its flaws, or will it continue to lose important talent? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. See you in the next one.